What are you lighting there?
A match. So I figured I would buy us a donut, and I cut it in half, and it's our half birthday.
Oh my gosh, 26 episodes of
we
this.
We thought we were going to make it. How many episodes?
Six episodes. We thought we'd be dead at 6.
We overperformed that, didn't we?
We're like one of those NASA space rover things. This is the 4,000th day of the
30-day mission.
30-day mission for opportunity.
That's how you should introduce us. You should be like, this is episode number 26 of 6. All right, we got to blow these out.
All right.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Quiet, please.
What's a golden birthday?
Or one where you get peed on. I don't know.
I'm glad I was not a relative of yours. I had no idea that was a part of things.
2.
The Awful Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, episode number 26. I'm Jeff Parker.
And I'm CJ Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we'll look at carbon fiber, 10 times stronger and 5 times lighter than steel. We'll also look at the debate around working from home. Not coincidentally, it's National Work From Home Day.
Is there a national hybrid work from home day?
That'd be good.
That'd be fucking terrible.
Yeah, you're not a fan of the hybrid work from home?
No, it's like pants. You're either wearing them or you're not. There's nowhere in between. It's it. It's simple. You don't put on one leg of pants. You're like, they're fucking hybrid pants. No.
And what if you don't wear your pants to work day?
That's fine. Well, now we got to talk to HR because there should be thresholds on this. Bob, put on some pants, please.
It's also National Camera Day, so you can record Bob not wearing pants.
Do people still buy cameras? Is that still a thing?
I do.
Well, I know you
I'm
do.
a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of the Canon mirrorless cameras.
The mirrorless
new
cameras?
ones. Yeah, they're fantastic. I shoot a video probably as much as I shoot stills. I just love it.
Rip your hard drives is what that means.
Now that USB 3.2 exists and you can get a 2 terabyte drive for under $200, it's amazing.
You have this like string of hard drives behind you full of shit.
But they're tiny. They're the little tiny things.
It's not, the size doesn't matter. It's the motion of the ocean.
That's what I've heard.
That's what I've been told. I keep telling people it's going to be on my tombstone. It's the motion of the ocean. CJ Little.
As you get closer, you actually contemplate what you might want on your tombstone.
Yeah, is that what you're thinking about?
I want mine to say, "Oh God, was he old?" That's what I'm hoping for.
I want mine to just say "good enough."
Good enough, yes, for good reason. How's your week going?
You know what's good? I'm back.
Yes, welcome back. I haven't seen your smiley face in days
since
travel.
Yes, from Europe.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Something's going on with these European urinals.
How are they different?
They're
from
all
ours?
like 1.5 feet higher than ours.
Oh,
so like
are Europeans taller than Americans?
No, I think they pee out of their belly buttons.
Okay.
I don't know how this works. Why are they so fucking tall? Like, there's a dick joke in there that I don't even know if I should make. Like, I don't know if it's a short thing or a tall, but they're all super high. Like, I was literally at one point standing on my fucking tippy toes to pee into a urinal like my 3-year-old.
Were they installed wrong?
I'm assuming it's a splash
to
problem.
reduce splatter.
I'm assuming
right?
it's a splatter problem. I would rather have to risk the splashback of pee than like rubbing my dick on the urinal.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
It's terrible.
This is the part where I tune over to Smartless.
Yeah, totally.
I am done with this show.
Totally. Or just turn on the white noise show. Look, European Union. Really happy about the USB-C thing. Got those on all devices. Appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's great.
Can we now focus on the urinals? They're too tall.
On Sunday, what is that, 5 days ago?
Something like that.
4 days ago. Dodger first baseman Freddie Freeman hit his 2,000th hit. Got his 2,000th hit.
2,000th hit.
Yeah, which is really good.
That's a lot of
career.
hits.
Not in the season, in his career.
Not in the game.
That'd be quite a season.
Be quite a game.
Yeah.
Game keeps going forever.
Which was super, mind-blowing. Really cool. Really cool. The Dodger organist, Dieter Rule, the next time that Freddie came up to be at bat, he plays the theme song to Space Odyssey.
I was going to say, is that a Space Odyssey?
And I'm 2001? Like, what in the world is he playing? And then I realized, 2001.
That's great.
That's it.
That's really funny.
Very clever.
I feel like every organ player is just a genius smartass that knows all these cryptic references.
Dieter is for sure. And if you want to see a really fun thing, go onto Twitter and look up Dieter Decoder.
Oh, that's right.
And it will tell you why Dieter plays what Dieter plays.
Oh, that's great.
It's fascinating.
Cool.
Let's get to our headline.
Let's do it.
Solar panel bails out Texas grid during major heat wave.
Oh, God, the irony.
Yeah. The irony is thick. Texas is having an amazing, quite a heat wave. It's 118 degrees in Texas, literally right at this minute as we record this.
118 degrees.
118 degrees in
Fahrenheit?
Yeah, I'm not. We know what that would be in Celsius. You'd be dead.
I have no idea what it would be in Celsius. You're the one that's always claiming the metric system, and then you give me a fucking temperature in Fahrenheit.
It's Texas. I'm giving it to you in Fahrenheit.
In big units.
They do not even speak Celsius.
You
can't get through the border.
It's banned.
With Celsius.
It's banned. Yeah, if you use Celsius there, they kick you out.
The more important thing is they tried to pass a law recently where they made it harder to connect renewables to the grid. Renewables, not just solar, but renewables all sorts. And they were going to add more gas-generated electricity to the grid. And of course, that would have caused even more of the problem. And solar has saved them in this heat wave.
I mean, you could still generate power with gas during a heat wave, right?
The problem is, the more you create, the more, gas, even though natural gas is fairly not exactly horrible.
It's not the worst, but it's not the best.
It's not as bad as cow belches and things like that. It still contributes to global warming, which as time goes by, we're going to get more and more of these heat waves, and they're going to become more frequent and more intense.
Totally. Have you ever seen, as a quick aside, one of the natural gas generators, the power plants?
Oh, sure.
They're just jet engines.
Yeah, of course.
They're crazy.
Of course.
They're
That's
so
how
cool.
it works.
Yeah.
But don't make any more.
No, just stop that.
I'm not a huge fan of the turbines, the wind turbines.
Why not? It's the best way to get rid of birds.
That's a myth.
Oh.
Yeah, and everybody said that, but it actually isn't true. They lose almost no birds to those things. Birds aren't that stupid. This is the problem. It's physiology. The bird isn't that stupid. It's not going to fly into the fan.
It's just a bunch of birds sitting over there being like, "Hey, get the new guy. Tell him to go fly through the fan. Hey, Jimmy, go fly through over there."
But my problem is not that. My problem is not that at all. My problem is just it's moving parts, and moving parts break. You know what's great? No moving parts.
Yeah. You know what does kill birds? This episode? Cats.
Yes.
And those Stirling engines. There's like one out in the desert in California.
What's a Stirling engine?
So there's solar farms.
Oh, it's the mirrors that aim it at the
and the bird's just like flying along minding its own shit, and then it gets cooked.
Don't do that.
Well, yeah, pigeons. I'd be fine with it for pigeons. I'm not a pigeon fan.
FTC sues Amazon over deceptive Prime sign-up and cancellation process. Have you seen this?
This is not a surprise to me.
If you've ever been on Amazon and you've ordered anything and I have an account that doesn't have Prime. I have an account that has Prime. And
you have two separate accounts?
I do.
Why?
And I actually use both of them for things that I'm not in a rush with.
Okay.
Yeah, just give it to me on the regular account. I don't want you to make any effort to get this to me quickly. Don't waste anyone's time or effort getting this to me quickly. Send it to me the cheapest, slowest way. When it gets to me, it gets to me. That's fine. But that's what I pretend they do. Of course, that's not even what they do.
It rushes it to your curb and then it sits there for 3 days.
I don't know I don't know what's different about it, but more importantly, what I want from Amazon, can I please have this? Just give me a service where I can say, when you fill up the box full of things, ship it to me.
They have that. It's called Amazon Day.
What's
it literally
that?
exists.
What is that?
They just, instead of them sending it to you and you order it, they just queue it up and send it to you in a batch. Like
I would love that.
It exists.
That's exactly what I want.
Wait, hold on. Let's go back. I'll write a strongly worded letter to Andy.
Okay.
And next week you'll have it. It'll be called Amazon Day. It'll be an option available in your checkout. It's literally in there.
There's just 90% of the things I buy from Amazon, I don't need that in an hour from now.
Totally.
And they still want to get it to me like an hour from now. I'm not in that much of a rush. I'm good. I'm organized.
It's called Prime Day.
I'm
It's
totally
a thing.
Prime Day, I thought, was when they had the specials.
They call it it's like your Prime delivery day. Prime Day is the special thing. Look, they've got a marketing problem. It's clear to me.
Clearly.
But they have, because they've
got a naming problem.
It's just so funny. I literally do exactly what you're saying. When I'm ordering something, I don't really give a shit when this gets here. I don't need it now. So I'll put it in the Prime Day. And then every time you do that, they give you like a $2 digital credit to buy books.
I don't care about that. I just don't need you to make that much effort to get it to me quickly. It's not important to me.
Well, it exists.
I guess I can consolidate my life into one account then.
Oh, why you'd have multiple accounts?
I want it to be, this is not important. Don't stress over this. If anybody has anything else they need to do it first.
Yeah.
When you get to this, it's great.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a bandwidth problem whereby you ordering your mustache wax, it's now somehow keeping somebody from getting their diapers. Like, I don't feel like you're getting in the way of this, but I appreciate your kindness for that.
I just picture these poor employees who apparently have to pee in bottles because they don't get breaks.
First of all, the robots don't have to pee. You don't want the Prime Days queue up thing. You want before you ship this, I want to mandate that somebody gets a pee break.
Exactly.
You want the pee break.
That's exactly what. And by the way, I'll pay for the pee break.
Yeah,
Can I buy pee breaks?
This is going to be great for your golden 50th.
This mandates someone gets to go pee. I just paid for your hours to go pee. However long it takes you.
Thank you card, a little pee thank you
Here's
card.
10 minutes to go pee or whatever
My
it
bladder
is.
thanks you.
Yeah. Let me just check a box and I give you $10 or whatever I give you to pay for the time it takes for you to go have a nice relaxing pee.
Jessica K in Reno Fernley, Nevada thanks you that she could pee. Thank you, Jeff.
Those stories break my heart. I don't want people working like that. Certainly not on my behalf.
The second half of our first year is going swimmingly.
You haven't seen an account that doesn't have Prime in probably
20 years.
Whatever. The thing where you try to check your stuff out so you can have it shipped to you. It says, get it here tomorrow. And there's a big giant button.
Yep.
And there's this little thing that looks like it's grayed out that says, don't enroll me in Prime or just ship regularly. And it's really hard to know that if you pick the other button, it automatically enrolls you in Prime.
It's a double negative.
But if you pick the little grayed out looking thing, you can then get through and somehow, and it's the same thing in the reverse. If you've accidentally signed up for Prime, it's something like 4 pages
navigate to undo.
To navigate to get you unsubscribed. They literally internally call it the Iliad to describe the process of Homer's epic poem, the complex voyage of getting internally they call it that at Amazon.
That's the most damning thing right there.
Right?
They call it the fucking Iliad.
Anyway, the FTC is busting them over both having you sign up way too easily and making cancellation incredibly hard.
Okay, I appreciate this. Can we go look at gyms for a little bit? Can we just take a look at gym
membership? Well, it's the same idea.
No, it's like 1,000 times harder.
To cancel the gym?
Like if you're going to go after Amazon.
There's a Friends episode about this, I think.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't know. I haven't been to a gym in 30 years. If they serve donuts there, I'd go in, but I've heard. I read some TikToks.
In our case, there's a reason they should make it hard to cancel.
We should be, exactly. I'm in 8 gyms.
That's the gym business model.
It is, totally. That's what I mean. That's terrible.
There's not room enough in the gym for everyone who's signed up for the gym. What they know you will do is sign up and not show up, and they need you to not show up because they don't have room for everybody.
Nope.
Amazon will use small businesses to help deliver packages in the U.S.
I think this is super interesting.
I don't know how I feel about this. I have very mixed feelings about it. Go ahead and tell me why you think it's interesting.
Well,
it's your local bodega who's going to bring you the final mile of your package.
It's the efficiency play, right? It's like if you've got the bandwidth and if you're already going there anyway, then that makes sense to me.
Right.
But not at the risk of like squeezing everybody else out. But I can see this as.
Don't you think there's going to be a lot of people in those bodegas who are like, yeah, I'll get the deliveries tomorrow?
Well, yeah, but then they're not going to get them again. That's the great part. You sacrifice a small bit for the greater good. If Uber didn't have ratings, Uber would quickly devolve into the taxi industry. Okay. That was the biggest problem with taxis. Is like you got in the car because
the individual driver was not
he didn't
rated.
give a shit.
Right.
So if you start rating people to do these things, and it's like, well, if you didn't deliver those couple packages, that sucks for those people. You got to fix it. Then you're never going to use those people again to deliver.
One of my favorite things about Uber's rating system is that the customer is also rated.
Yeah, I love that.
Which is really smart. Do you as a driver want to pick this person up? They've done some bad things in cabs before or in Ubers before.
I have like a 4.85, and I'm like, what asshole gave me not 5 stars? Like I want to know. I want to know which one. I want to go back and be like, what did I do wrong?
You angered someone.
Clearly.
Most people don't know that when your Uber driver offers you waters and mints, you're supposed to offer him a sandwich and a dessert tray.
So they're estimating Amazon is going to pay about $2.50 per delivery from your local bodega or whatever your local store is.
Okay.
They have done this. This is already in existence in Japan and Spain.
Okay.
And so now they're just testing it out to see if they can make it work in California, New York, and Boston, and I think Washington.
Love it. Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes.
I mean, especially if you can get a twofer in there.
With UPS, that's what they're doing all day. That's all they do.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to bump them off of their schedule for bringing my stuff.
Yep.
And by the way, I'm the guy who mostly doesn't care, but when I care, I really, really, really care. When I need something on time and I need it and it's urgent and I use that Prime account, it really does matter to me.
Yeah.
So the fact that somebody at Bob's Mechanics and Mufflers, whatever this shop is going to bring me my package is like, wow, can I have a professional do this?
Well, what if it's just your slow account package?
That's not even a problem. I don't care.
Then you don't care.
And those they're going to send me by ambulance.
Yes.
Sirens blazing. Because that's what Amazon does.
I'm going to spend an extra $200 to have it shipped to me with a CHP escort.
Those are coming to me by drone.
Yeah. This thing shows up at your house like it's a president. It's great. They block off. It's like a motorcade. They block off the streets. Jeff needs his air fryer.
Exactly.
Needs it right now. The old one died.
This is actually kind of cool. They are still buying about 100,000 Rivian delivery vans.
I think Rivian just signed up for the non-standard, soon-to-be new standard charging adapter. They're the latest.
The Tesla adapters.
Yeah, the Tesla adapters. The NACA.
North American Charger thing.
Sure. North American Charger
whatever
thing.
it's called.
That's what it's called. The North American Charger thing. Yeah, that's great. Getting all your tech advice from the tech show, the North American Charger
I'm 3/4 of the way there.
The NAC.
Come on.
You're close enough. You got North America. Good job. You know where you're
thank
sitting.
you.
I'm impressed. We're all really impressed. It's cool. I like that they got those to market before anybody else.
Yeah.
For the truck, I still think if I were to buy an electric truck tomorrow, I'd buy an F-150.
Well, there's a lot of history there. You're liking that because of a lot of other reasons.
No, not just the history.
That's like buying a Coke instead of buying Bob's soft drink.
This is a quick aside. My brother, who apparently is our floor director today, I didn't even see him in there. He has a new F-150 and the
gas-powered F-150.
Yeah, dinosaur powered. On the door, there's like a piece of plastic, like the door handle thing trim. And my brother said, he's like, look at that. And I look at it and he's like, does it look familiar? And I'm like, kind of, but I couldn't tell. It had like a pattern on it. Yeah. It's like a black and white roadmap of Detroit.
Oh, that's
which I thought was really cool because he and I both grew up in Detroit.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It's like one of those things where you sort of recognize it, but then when he tells you what it is, you're like, oh,
makes perfect sense.
I see it.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. A little bit of Detroit history. And
billionaire brings Tesla autopilot rebuke. Dan O'Dowd. He's a software billionaire and a vehement critic of Tesla Motors' allegedly self-driving technology.
Get in line, Dan.
Does not like the fact that it's called full self-driving software and it's what it is. It's L2, right? Is that what it is? Yeah. So it's really the name does not match what it is at all.
Yeah.
He thinks it's extremely dangerous to have this on the road. It should not be on the road because there are people who believe that it's full self-driving, and it's nowhere near full self-driving.
Yeah. FTC, why aren't you doing anything about this?
It's a great question.
Like fully self-driving, that sounds kind of black and white to me.
He drives the Tesla Roadster, one of the early Roadsters.
The OG one, yeah.
And still loves it, and that's what he loves to drive. And his wife drives like a 2012 Tesla Model S. They're both perfectly happy with those. They don't have the software. They don't have the full self-driving software at all.
Those.
The electric car part of it's great.
Yeah, until you're in the water and you can't get out because you don't have to take off the fucking speaker grill to get to the wire to pull the thing to open the door. It's all great until that. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's complicated.
It is complicated, yeah. To exit your vehicle while you're sinking. You're right. It's complicated. That's when I want complication. That's when I want a fucking flow chart to appear. Instead of an airbag, there's like a flow chart easel that pops out. It
shows you how to get out.
Yeah.
Sure, no, it's great.
Like step 1, pay your license fee. Oh, you didn't? You're underwater? Oh, sorry. Step 2, meh.
Exit as a service.
It's literally, it's their exit as a service. Would you pay $40? Fuck, honey, do you have the Venmo?
We're sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about? Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Fix the fucking door thing.
Okay, enough for the headlines. Up next, CJ is going to talk about carbon fiber reinforced polymers. Tell me it's not. Tell me that's not so. Tell me this is not what you're talking about.
It's a new level of nuanced nerdiness for all of us.
Let's do it.
Are you familiar with carbon fiber?
Of course I am.
How so?
I wasn't born in a barn.
Well, you actually were.
Close to it, sure. The building next over was a barn for sure.
What do you know of carbon fiber? High level, through 3 sentences or less.
It's a bunch of fibers of carbon woven together and put together in some sort of polymer laminate.
Yep.
Am I anywhere close?
Yeah, that's the whole bit.
Okay.
Great. We're done.
Okay,
Moving
great.
on. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk around carbon fiber recently in the wake of the Titan.
Yes.
Which I'm
disaster.
assuming every single one of our listeners has heard about the Titan disaster.
Course.
And my fear is that the public consensus around carbon fiber might be souring, right? And the whole idea of composites. I hope
that's not the lesson you want to take from this.
No, of course not. But I think people saw this and like, well, the carbon fiber failed.
You're missing the whole thing.
You're missing the entire point. Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. OceanGate had a lot of issues, in my opinion. The Titan was a terrible use of carbon fiber, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
This should have never happened. And
it was also expired carbon fiber. They got it like on discount from...
Yeah, I'll talk about it from Boeing.
Oh, you already know this story. I don't even know this stuff. Why don't you just go ahead and I'll shut up.
Unfortunately, the CEO was actually bragging at one point. It sounded like he was bragging that they got the carbon fiber for I think it was for the relay, the relay of the hull, cheap from Boeing because it was, quote, expired. It was past its shelf life.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. Carbon fiber itself doesn't really expire.
Okay.
But
the laminate would.
The polymer
is
what
would expire.
So it's unclear what it could have just been that they were old fibers that they got cheap. Could have been that it was pre-preg and that it had epoxy. We don't really know.
All right. Well, let's stop and go back and make this make sense to the rest of the world.
But from what I can tell, there is no real concern around carbon fiber. Carbon fiber is still an amazing composite that when used within its design limits, super safe. Right. And we've been doing this for 30 plus years pretty well.
Okay.
Challenge is OceanGate didn't heed sort of the warnings that they should have.
The loud cracking sounds?
Well, those would be some of the more obvious ones.
That they actually had in one of the previous voyages?
Yeah. And wait, what do you mean one of? I think you mean all of.
Is that true in many of them?
Yeah. My understanding is when you got into one of these things, they told you to expect this.
Ooh.
So that you weren't
And they didn't explain what it was, what the cracking was?
Yeah. And there are numerous letters written, one from 2018 from an expert in DSVs, deep submersible vehicles, who said you must stop doing this until you know what the source of the fucking cracking is.
But you know what the source of the cracking is.
That's kind of what he was implying. But like, at least know what it is. It's not like there's a fucking box of Jiffy Pop out there that's popping. Like something bad is happening.
Anytime there's popping and you're in a
it's bad.
You know, not a plane,
not
or
a Willy Wonka's
underwater.
factory.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to give you the list of things where you want to avoid popping.
Yeah. Basically, anything involving travel or high pressure, I think, is generally bad.
Perfect.
Anyway, but I wanted to start with simply carbon fiber itself, right?
Yeah.
You've got fibers. They're thin, strong, crystalline filaments of carbon. They're essentially carbon atoms bonded together in long chains.
Right.
They're like 5 to 10 micrometers in diameter, so they're super small. They are very popular because they've got high stiffness, high tensile strength, high strength to weight ratio, chemical resistance, temperature tolerance. Like, it's sort of this amazing thing. I did not know how they were made. I thought this would be a little interesting for some of our super nerdy listeners, they take this spun polyacrylonitrile, commonly called PAN, P-A-N. They heat these filaments to 300 degrees Celsius in the air, which breaks many of the hydrogen bonds, oxidizes them. They then take it and they put it into an oxygen-free sort of inert atmosphere, so like an argon gas or something, and they heat it to 2,000 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
Which is crazy, because at that point you don't want it to burn. You just want it to turn into carbon. And this is what changes the molecular bond structure to turn it into carbon. And by doing this, you can get something in the neighborhood of like 93 to 95% carbon.
Sounds like it's going to be expensive.
Oh, it's super expensive.
Yeah.
But
just
it's got a lot of these great
because of the
properties.
process.
To make it. Yeah, right. Now, that's just the fibers. You've got to combine these with other materials to form a composite. For example, when permeated with a plastic resin and baked, it forms carbon fiber reinforced polymers.
Correct.
So that's and what's confusing is even though these CFRPs have a very high strength to weight ratio and they're extremely rigid, they'll sometimes be called brittle, quote unquote, because they have no yield strength.
Right.
And that's different compared to a metal, because a metal will yield at some point, right? You will start to bend a metal and it'll permanently deform before it fails.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen with carbon fiber.
It just snaps.
There's no yield strength. So you get to when it's peak strength and then it fails. So it's perfectly fine, everything's okay, and then it's
Gone.
not. And that's a very different use case. We use these things in all sorts of stuff. You've already mentioned some, like we put them in spacecraft, we put them in aircraft, we put them in race car bodies. Something like a current Formula One car is like 80% carbon fiber.
Oh, sure,
right?
because
Which
it's so
is
strong and so light.
super strong and super light, right? That's the benefit.
Teslas, carbon fiber body panels, or
The
no?
only carbon fiber I know in production cars was the BMW i3. The i3 had a carbon fiber crash structure, I think.
Okay.
Smart Car may have used one as well. And have you ever picked up like a large carbon fiber item?
No.
It'll break your brain. My first
How
time.
light it is?
Oh man,
Yeah.
it feels like you're picking up air is the only way I can describe it. The first time I saw a racing car seat that was all carbon fiber,
Yeah.
you pick it up and it's like you can pick it up with half of a finger.
You don't realize how light it is, and you
Yeah,
jerk
and-
it up into the air.
And you're just like, wait, I don't understand. And it's a whole structure, but it's just carbon fiber, right?
That's cool.
You already touched on this though. It has a higher cost than any other materials. So in a comparison between steel and carbon fiber, you're talking about carbon fiber being 10 to 12x more expensive.
Yeah, I was guessing just because of the process you were describing.
Totally. But the prices come down because you're talking about 20 years ago, this stuff was like 35 times more expensive than using steel.
Okay.
So it's getting cheaper, certainly, but it's still a lot more expensive. Here's what's important, and I think this is related to the Titan disaster. There are many factors to achieve the required strength in a carbon fiber part. One thing that's super confusing about this, the carbon fiber itself is called carbon fiber.
Sure.
The carbon fiber polymers are commonly referred to as carbon fiber. So really when
Which
people
it's
say
not.
it's not,
They aren't.
but that's what people normally call
They
it.
are neither carbon nor fiber.
It is carbon fiber in a polymer.
Yeah.
So it's both. For the sake of
But
this.
but the polymer is neither carbon nor fiber.
Nor fiber, yes, of course. Usually it's an epoxy.
Yeah.
For the sake of this conversation, when I say carbon fiber, I typically mean the carbon fiber in epoxy.
Yeah.
Because the carbon fiber itself are just a bunch of strands that don't do you a lot of good. And so you lay them down in some sort of weave and then put it in some sort of epoxy.
Right.
So what's important is that if you want to achieve sort of the required strength in a carbon fiber part, you need to manage the orientation of the fibers, process you use to lay down the fibers. You'll commonly hear wet layup versus pre-preg. And those are two very different things. Wet layup is where you're taking sheets of carbon fiber weave, you're putting them in a mold, and then you're applying the epoxy manually.
Okay.
Way cheaper to do it that way,
Yeah.
but you don't get any sort of consistent ratio, where if you want a desired 50-50 or 70-30 ratio between carbon fiber and epoxy. Pre-preg are sheets that you buy that already have the epoxy in them.
Okay.
So that's much better, way more expensive, but you get a stronger.
Yeah, all I'm hearing when
part.
you're saying either one of these things is cost.
Yeah, totally. Tons of money. You can achieve a greater strength, and this is something I did not know until I researched this for this segment. You can achieve a greater strength relative to weight by using a material in between two layers of carbon fiber. You will typically see you'll have like a wood or a foam in between it. And the reason this works is because imagine you have like a big sheet of carbon fiber, right? You've got carbon fiber with a balsa wood or something in between it, and then another sheet of carbon fiber underneath that.
Okay.
When you try to deflect that, you try to push down in the middle, the top sheet will go into compression. The bottom sheet will go into tension.
Okay.
And that's what you want. That's where you're getting your strength from tension in the carbon fiber. It's commonly not just, if you want something super strong, just carbon fiber through and through. You'll put some substrate
It's a
in the
layer
middle.
of some sort of the substrate.
And this becomes important when we think about how this worked in deep-submergence vehicles, right, or DSVs. And you probably saw earlier this week, James Cameron talk about how he felt carbon fiber was a terrible material to use in DSVs. And this is part of the reason why.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber on itself, tons of benefits. The composite has a density that's 2 times less than aluminum, almost 5 times less than steel. If you have a carbon fiber component, you need like 42% of the weight relative to the same piece in aluminum, the same amount of steel. So it's much, much lighter. It's like you can reduce the weight of a steel part by over 80%.
That's amazing.
So that's why you see these things used in places where typically you don't want to have a lot of weight. Aircraft, spacecraft, things like that. I also didn't know this, that it has a very low, it's a terrible heat conduction. I didn't know
It's
that.
bad at conducting electricity as well, I
But
believe.
it does conduct electricity, but usually poorly. It depends on how you lay the fibers. You can get it to conduct, but yes. But it's a very good heat insulator. So that was something that was new to me. And it has almost no no heat expansion, 6 times less than aluminum. So it's a pretty, pardon the expression, solid material. But it has some design challenges. As I mentioned earlier, it has no elasticity because it doesn't yield.
Yeah.
Most metals, like I had mentioned, steel and aluminum, they'll yield, they'll bend. You can see them fail. You can see if you're putting too much weight on the thing, you're like, oh, that chair is bending.
Fail now.
It's going to fail soon. That's a bad thing. Carbon fiber, not so much, right? When it goes, it goes. And there's no deformation. So that's why a lot of people will call it brittle. You'll hear it quote unquote called brittle. This was a big deal for Boeing during the development of the 787. The 787 Dreamliner has extensive use of composites and carbon fiber throughout it. Something like 50%, I think, of a 787 is composite. So they spent a long time making sure that these would be crash worthy relative to their metal counterparts. And while the carbon fiber strands themselves are pretty durable, that's not enough because the polymer you need to worry about as well. And those polymers will break down over time, right? From elements like UV, water. Those are real issues. You need to keep that structure intact so that it doesn't delaminate because by itself, those individual layers aren't nearly as strong as the whole piece.
Right.
That's why you have like that substrate in the middle. So you need to ensure the strands are staying intact. If they're failing, you've got a ticking time bomb on your hands.
Yeah.
This is, I think, ultimately what we saw with the Titan. Now, in the world of deep-submergence vehicles, or DSVs, we've been doing this for a long time. And I'd like to talk about these on a future episode. The Trist, which I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, it's Italian, reached over 35,000 feet into the Mariana Trench in 1960. So this has not been something new to us. But that pressure sphere was a 7-foot sphere made out of 5-inch thick steel to withstand the 18,000 PSI, or about 1,200 atmospheres of pressure.
Crazy.
Which is just madness at that depth, right? Metal is the tried and true way to build these things. We've been doing it for 60 plus years, but at that scale, it's not buoyant. And that's the problem with making them out of metal, is when you make something that size with that thick of metal, it requires a large float in order to make it ascend.
Right.
And with the Trist, they used a giant tank full of gasoline to make it float, which is pretty crazy.
Ooh, that's wild.
Because gasoline basically doesn't compress.
Right.
So you can make a thin wall tank, but it's lighter than water.
Right.
It's actually a really cool design. It had this giant float on top that was full of gas. And the way they got it to go down is they had hoppers full of iron pellets, and they were held shut with an electromagnet.
Yeah.
So if there's a power failure, electromagnet would pop open, it would drop all the iron pellets, and it would automatically ascend.
Cool.
And that was, again, 60 years ago, right? So
Yeah,
it's
that's pretty cool. I like engineering.
Unfortunately, the folks at OceanGate, I don't think did. Okay, so that brings us to the Titan, which leveraged carbon fiber to achieve neutral buoyancy. That was the main reason for using carbon fiber, is they could get a lighter ship that would be neutrally buoyant.
Yeah.
They didn't have to have this giant float. Also make it easier for them to move it around, take it in and out of the water, smaller support vehicles. As I've mentioned now already 2 or 3 times in this segment, carbon fiber doesn't yield, right? It's not going to tell you much before it fails.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the use of carbon fiber is what ensured its demise from the start. This was the biggest mistake.
Yeah.
Now, it makes a lot of sense on paper to use it for reasons to not have to have a giant float, smaller things, sure. But as it turns out, the engineering doesn't really work.
So James Cameron was right.
Oh, James Cameron was 100% right, I believe, about this. I mean, I don't think there's any way you can get around that. And that's a guy who's dived the Titanic 30 times.
Sure.
I think you can reasonably say he personally has done it more times than that vessel.
Oh, probably.
Which is kind of crazy.
It's fun to have infinite money.
You have to adhere several materials in this. You have the carbon fiber, you've got the titanium that's adhered to the ends of the carbon fiber. That could have been one of the failure points.
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Anywhere you have a joint.
Anywhere you've got a joint, right? Especially between materials.
Always.
Also, the stresses this thing was under appear to have caused significant damage from every single dive. First-hand witnesses would say, oh, you'd hear this like cracking on the way down.
Every crack you hear is a carbon fiber strand.
That's the belief,
breaking, right?
Yeah. I mean, it got so bad to the point where supposedly OceanGate would tell their passengers, oh, by the way, we can hear a lot of cracking on the descent.
The fabric equivalent of that is a strand of thread in that fabric is bursting.
Exactly. That's
So
how
the more that happens, the weaker everything is getting.
Every time I leave the hometown buffet, that's what my sweater does. I just feel a couple sweaters, just a couple threads just going ping, ping. So this is terrible, right? I mean, you had people writing letters as near as 4 or 5 years ago saying, hey, you need to get to the bottom of this before you keep diving. And this thing wasn't certified. Nobody ever run through it. They're just like,
Because it was on international waters. Is that why it didn't have a regulatory body?
That's a bullshit answer, right? I mean, OSHA guidelines were written in fucking blood for a reason, right? I mean, we didn't have fire escapes until we had a factory fire in New York, right? That's what got us fire escapes.
But you're more than 12 miles out. So you're in international waters.
Totally.
So who governs that?
Nobody.
Right.
I mean, but you would hope the fucking company
You'd
itself.
hope they comply with standards.
Yeah, would be just reasonable. And this is the other thing that I've come to discover on this is these deep sea vessels. It's a very small community. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of people. I think you're talking about like single-digit thousands of people
who get in these things.
Well, just the whole the community who operate and build them.
Yeah.
So it's a small group, and you would think they'd all want to play nice.
You'd think.
It looks like here they were, trying to trailblaze a different path. So there's a nice analog to some other I don't know, car companies that we talk about
Yeah.
who may or may not be doing things well within the rules.
Taking shortcuts that are costing people lives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's problematic, certainly, as we've seen here. I can tell you a couple things. I'm not going down in a carbon fiber DSV,
right.
no matter what. Now, would I go down in one that's made out of like steel that we've been doing for 60 years and go, it's got a pretty good track record?
Yeah.
Sure. But I also have no desire to go down 3 miles to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Like, it's cool. Just show me the video. I'm happy to take a robot.
This is what I'm going to say about this is what I'm saying about the whole thing. We don't need tourism
Totally.
to the Titanic.
It's
We're
like
really, really good at telepresence.
Totally.
And you know what? It's completely safe. No human life is at risk. If we, destroy a few semiconductors, we're all going to be okay. We can make more of those.
Yeah, TSMC can knock us out some more.
We know how to fabricate those.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's not send anyone into harm's way. Let's not sling meat up at planets that we could do through telepresence.
Sure.
There's no reason to send human beings or any other animals. Let's not send dogs and monkeys either. On any of these adventures. That's absolutely crazy. In the hull of this makes my mind explode. In the hull of this thing, they were looking at a computer monitor.
I know.
And that's what they were looking.
They had a screen. Yeah.
You could have literally been on the land looking at a camera that was down there. If it was really important for you to see what's happening in the Titanic right this minute.
Totally.
If that's what you wanted to see, we could drop a camera. Otherwise, we could cut together a lovely film of the highlights of all the camera trips we've made down there.
Put them in the fucking sub, put the sub down about 100 feet, and then on the screen, just play a rendering of the Titanic.
Fantastic. Even better.
You get the experience. It's
Even
just like
better.
going to
Let's put them in a nice chair.
Yeah.
They don't even have to pretend to be in a sub.
Yeah, but it's like the California Adventure thing, right? The soaring over California. Like, I want to feel like I'm flying around, blow some scented air, right? I want to smell the
if you're getting scented air inside of a submarine, you've got a problem.
That's Sal behind you.
You're sitting too close to your cabin mate.
Totally. All right, up next, Jeff's going to talk about going back to the office. Hooray.
Aren't you glad to be going back to the office?
No one under the age of 60 wants to go back to the office.
All right, let's discuss that. War, I tell you, war. As we said at the top today, it is National Work From Home Day. Last month, Amazon employees staged a walkout over Amazon's mandate to return to the office. Do you have a side of this nasty fight?
Yes.
Work at home, not work at home?
Yes.
You want people to go back to the office? You want everyone to go back to the office?
Generally speaking, it depends on which industry you're talking about.
Yeah.
But typically, this conversation is around sort of the information the information industry, right? Like,
well, it's hard for Uber drivers to work from home.
Right now, we don't have plumbers that can work from home quite yet. For folks,
and there are some industries where you can, but it's really hard. Like if you're a first grade teacher,
sure,
it's really hard to do that from home.
Absolutely,
but they can kind of do it.
Yeah. No, so I think typically if we just focus in on what most people are talking about, sitting at desks with a keyboard, having interactions, in a conference room and a whiteboard.
Banking.
Generally speaking, especially when you change your culture, work from home completely
your corporate
works.
culture.
Your corporate culture, the company's culture.
Not that you're suddenly buying Thai food instead of Mexican.
No, that sounds lovely though. I'm hungry now. Thank you.
There's a lot of people who disagree with you. Martha Stewart wants people to get out of the house. She urged workers to return to the office full time, and she's on a rampage to get that done. She says, you can't possibly get everything done working 3 days a week in the office and 2 days remotely.
So, okay, that's hybrid, right? What she's talking about there is that hybrid model.
Yeah.
I would argue the hybrid model is the worst possible version.
Tell me why you think that.
Because of the bits that I've read about folks in a hybrid model, especially where there's no clarity on when.
Yeah.
So like these folks be like, hey, just work in the office some 3 days out of the week. Well, if you're in the office for Monday and Tuesday, but I'm not, and then you got to schedule
now
a
we
meeting.
don't encounter each other.
Well, but now you're just doing the same shit. You've just come into the office to have your Zoom meeting with me who's at home.
Right.
So like that hybrid model is just the absolute worst.
But maybe I schedule my department and we work on
that's
Monday
the
through
better
Tuesday,
version,
Wednesday.
Is they say like everybody be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
Right.
or whatever it is. I still think that's problematic because if you think about people's lives and how they're going to make that work, that is super difficult now, especially if you've got kids or a family or anything else. It just does not work. So I really think you've got to pick one or the other. Get rid of the hybrid model. Either you're working remote and you're a remote first company, or you're just saying, nope, we're in the office every day doing this like we've been doing it for 60 years.
I'm not positive I agree with that, but we'll move on and we'll come back to it. How's that?
Okay.
Martha Stewart even took a few shots at France to make her point, accusing the nation of not being industrious enough. Look at the success of France with their stupid, off for August, blah, 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 she said. It's not a very thriving country. Should America go down the drain because people don't want to go back to work?
First of all, Martha, I don't think that's our biggest challenge right now with keeping us from going down the drain.
Yeah.
I mean, thanks. Also, have you talked to the people in France?
They like taking August off.
Turns out that actually
By the
works
way,
pretty
we all
well.
take half of December off.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Half of December. I've always argued from like November 20th until January 3rd, nothing happens.
Pretty much, except unless you work in retail
you're fucked.
Yes, and in which case you kill yourself.
Yep.
Half of this country has to work their butts off, so the other half can sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
Also, France is the 23rd highest GDP in the world.
Yeah.
The U.S.
Just sit on their ass
the U.S.
doing
is
nothing.
number 7, but it's not that huge of a spread.
Sure.
There's 205 countries or whatever there
There's
is.
also more to life than GDP.
Correct. JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon, another supporter of returning to the office, says you have to look at the flaws of the Zoom world. It doesn't work for an apprenticeship program. It doesn't work for spontaneous stuff. It slows down honesty and decision making. At home, you tend to say, okay, let's pick this up tomorrow. Which, by the way, I remember saying that a lot at the office.
Sure. Totally.
We're going to circle back to this on Thursday. It was no different.
Sure.
A lot of people at home on a call are texting each other, sometimes saying what a jerk that person is.
Oh, yeah. That never would happen in the office. Here's the thing about this.
I don't remember any of that being different at the office versus at home.
These are such terrible comments, right? I've said,
I do think he's right about apprenticeship. I do think that actually does make a big difference if you can mentor somebody or if you want to be mentored. It does help to be in the same location.
Yes, and you can still be in the same location. I mean, having built several remote-only teams.
Sure.
You don't just say, like, I'm never going to see you. The ones that have done the best job of this, they schedule in-person time that's focused in-person time, right? So my favorite examples are ones that will take, and usually once or twice a year, they'll bring the whole company together for around a week or a week and a half.
Yeah.
And it's the most productive time possible. And then in smaller groups, they'll get together like maybe every couple months, every month or two.
There are incidental things that if you are mentoring somebody that they're just going to catch on the fly. This just happens to come up and they happen to be with you, so they get to witness how you behave in that situation.
I still don't think that needs to be done in the flesh, right? That doesn't have to be IRL.
But a lot of times they won't see it otherwise.
Sure. Well, but you can still have...
I need my kid to see me when I program. I need to see him to see me not remember a certain function or how to do a certain thing, so that he sees me look on the web to figure, oh yeah, that's how it's done. Now I remember to look it up. And because he sees that, he goes, oh, okay, I can do that. That's great.
I think programming is the best example of how apprenticeship works better remotely than together.
But if he doesn't see that, if he's not sitting next to me.
You have a screen share. Doesn't mean he's not sitting next to you. I'd argue you could see it better sitting remote. And then you have this whole argument of like, well, they're not focused and they're not at work. Really? You think people aren't watching cat videos, Jamie, on your fucking company internet?
Oh, for sure.
For sure they're doing this shit. Just because they're in the seat doesn't mean they're actually doing the work that you want. If you're judging the output of your staff based on how much time they spend in the office, you're a terrible fucking manager.
Right. That's not telling you anything.
That's not the mechanism, right? And then when you go, well, I like these people, I want them to be happy. Why are they in the car for an hour and a half each way? Why are they spending an hour in the subway?
I would argue if it were at our age, you and I, if we were going to say hire a writer for this show, which I would never want to do.
I'd use an AI.
No, you'd get horrible scripts, and you're going to argue that, and we'll come back.
No, today I get horrible scripts in the future.
Push pin in that. We'd hire somebody who doesn't need apprenticing, somebody who's really good and who just can get the job done, and we don't have to think about it.
But if we ran a company that wrote scripts,
yes, if you needed to hire a ton of these people, you would need to have some sort of apprenticeship program.
If I wanted to build a workforce to do it, if I wanted to hire a ton, I'd just go hire a ton. But like if you're building my world just comes from development. If I'm building a development team, I can still have apprentices remotely.
Yeah.
I need to fold them into the mix because you don't want a whole bunch of senior engineers doing a bunch of easy level one work.
Of course. Bob Iger, the returned CEO of Disney, said that he believes work at home can lead to isolation and a lack of cohesion among employees.
I 100% agree with that, which is why you have to change your culture, right? You've got to include other things to prevent this from happening. If you just say everybody sits at home, then of course this is going to fucking happen.
Once a month, they all come in at night and go to Disneyland.
Totally. That's what Bob should do.
Sure.
So once they just close it, everybody
if you only had a place where you could everybody gather and have a good time.
Fun, where you could hang out.
Sure.
Yeah, and you have drinks. Everybody can show up in their rainbow.
Arvind Krishna, the CEO of IBM, says work at home can be distracting and that it can be difficult to build a relationship with certain colleagues when you're not working in the same place. And there is a certain amount of relationship building that happens just from seeing somebody day to day.
Sure.
I do think there are certain kinds of work where apprenticeship does help if you are next to somebody for a period of time.
But you also have like this argument of you build relationships because you're in the same place. I would argue the vast majority of people don't know the person they're sitting next to in an office space. They just we're in different departments, or I don't talk to them. Like, it's not like the whole company is.
No, but there is someone who probably they are assigned. In the case of if you're in a law firm, all of the associates, the young associates, they actually see and interact to some degree with lawyers that they're working with on cases. And so they learn a lot about how that lawyer behaves in various situations. And I think that's really useful.
But they can totally see how the partner pads the time stats remotely. They don't have to see that in person. Oh, that's how you commit the felony. I understand.
Exactly.
You just round everything up to the nearest 25 hours. Check mark.
For law in general, it's all incentivized completely incorrectly.
Sure.
Horribly incentivized. David Richner, the CEO of Lyft, has said that he believes work at home can lead to burnout and that it can be difficult to maintain a healthy work-life balance when you're not working in a traditional office setting.
That's just comedy to me. Of course it could be that. So could being in the office.
You can burn yourself out in the office, you say?
Of course. course.
Yeah.
It's like none of these
Well,
are.
there is that whole thing of I'm at the office, I'm not at the office.
I get that.
There is a certain amount of physical divide
Sure.
between your work life and your personal
At
life.
4:50 p.m., I'm going to put a timer on your computer that says in 10 minutes, I'm shutting it off.
Yeah.
Then at 5 p.m., I shut it off.
Okay.
Now you're not at the office anymore. Problem solved.
Well, no, because some idiot's going to text you and you're still going to respond on your phone.
phone's also
Don't
off.
do that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why in France,
This is solvable
why in
problems.
France that's illegal.
Sure.
You can't text employees out of office hours.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's actually against the law.
Interesting.
In some cases, I don't think additional productivity is worth the loss of humanity.
Well, yeah, it's a balance, man. It's totally a balance.
Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, has said that he believes work at home is not sustainable and that employees should be required to return to the office.
No comment.
Meanwhile, Sheryl Sandberg, the former COO of Facebook, has been a vocal advocate for work at home. She said that working from home can help improve productivity, reduce stress, and increase employee satisfaction.
Yep.
I remember you and I,
Yeah.
in our younger days, would stock the fridge with, what was the green, super caffeinated drink for the programmers. We literally would try to make it so that they would never go home. I mean, gave them every service imaginable,
Well,
just made being there the most pleasant.
First of all, we had nowhere to go.
Right, ping pong tables and just
Yeah.
made and what a horrible. What's the green drink called? Mountain Dew.
Mountain Dew. Yeah.
So short-sighted. In hindsight, we should have locked the doors at 5 p.m. and said, "Get out."
That's actually not my
Go
favorite.
have a life. Go meet girls or boys or whatever it is you like.
Sure.
Go buy
Meet
a
people.
dog. Whatever
Yeah.
it is makes you happy. Get out of the office. Don't be in the office. Come back tomorrow in the morning and we'll pick it up again.
Sure.
If you want a long-term employee,
Exactly.
force them to have lives.
This is my favorite quote. Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. We had to do those things in order to get our experience, to then be like, oh yeah, this actually isn't the best
Yeah,
answer.
in hindsight, that was a horrible idea, but we didn't think that.
I about 20-ish years ago, I had a guy that worked for me who was super nice, super smart engineer. I didn't hire him. The guy he worked for me. I was talking to him one day and I was like, we were talking about the lunch, like he'd been working there for months, just making conversation. And I found out that he had an hour and a half commute one way.
Oh.
And I literally said, the next words out of my mouth were, I was like, okay, well, starting tomorrow, you
Yeah.
work from home.
Oh, please.
At least 2 days a week.
Right.
And
That's 3 hours
he
of your
sort
life
looked at
you're
me
gonna get back.
And he was like, oh, okay. And then his boss came to me a couple days later and said, he thinks you're firing him.
No.
And I was like, no, I'm not. He doesn't have to sit in the car. He's like, but he likes being in the car. He listens to the books on tape. And I'm like, well, you can listen to those at home. I don't give a shit. Like, it was just this madness of expectation of people coming to the office. I've always been opposed to this.
Again, I'm going to say there's some junior level employees where I think it is useful for. Mark Cuban, the billionaire investor and owner of the Dallas Mavericks, said most jobs can be done from home. He's argued that working from home can save businesses money and improve employee morale. Now, that's something we haven't talked about. It actually can save businesses money.
For sure.
It actually is cost effective if you can make it work. Ariana Huffington, the founder of the Huffington Post, has said that working from home can help reduce burnout and improve mental health. She's advocated a 4-day work week and other flexible work arrangements. And again, if you want to have a long-term business and you want to have a long-term relationship, churn is the enemy of business. You need your employees happy and healthy. And that's
People first, man.
She's 100% right. The work from home trend is a vestige of the pandemic, of course, and is either over or still booming, depending upon which statistics you rely on.
Sure. People that tell themselves they love their commute, one of two things is true. They're either lying to themselves or they have little kids at home. One of the two.
Or a spouse that they don't want to be around.
Well, okay.
I used to know a guy who ran a TV show. He was a writer and he would keep everyone there until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Just to go home.
Because he didn't want to go home.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It just was a horrible way to treat people.
Yeah.
The nice thing about work from home is the opportunity for workers who might not otherwise be available, like disabled people or people who have to take care of their children or elderly
ones,
parents or things like that, and who want to be there for their children or their elderly parents, don't want to have some other caretaker come do that. That actually is great. You actually need to remember, especially a big company like JP Morgan Chase, you could have some very valuable employees you're leaving on the table. Of
course.
If you're not able to include those sorts of people.
And that's why I'm always cautious to talk about this too loudly, because that's the secret superpower. You can find folks that are great that have no interest in going to an office.
Yes.
And they are willing to participate in a project and do excellent work to not have to do that. That's a selling trait.
And in conclusion, the smart companies in 2023 might not look like the neat rows and desks in Billy Wilder's The Apartment. Some of us need to go to the office and be mentors, maybe. Some of us will benefit from being mentored. Others can be equally valuable working from home. The key is always to be thinking about how we can be the most valuable to those around us.
For sure. Add maximum value.
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
I have. As you know, I've never been a big consumer of podcasts.
No.
Which I know is weird because I don't have a commute. I don't spend time
In the car,
in a place where I can do that. I am trying those. I try to understand better this landscape. I try to listen to maybe a couple hours a week, but that's about to change.
Oh, wow. Why is that about change? You're going to be driving somewhere?
Because I am super embarrassed to admit this, but I just discovered the Acquired podcast, and I
yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
These guys are super dorky. It's
Yeah.
all business history, and I've listened to like
It's
30 minutes.
tech business, right?
It's
I don't think
mainly
I've heard
tech
anything that
business,
isn't tech.
but it is great. Like
Yeah.
it's absolutely
There's
lovely.
a ton of great podcasts.
And
There's
because
so many
I was
good
driving my
podcasts.
kids back from where we left them while we were in Europe, and I had some time to kill while the kids were napping, and so I put on some podcasts. And Acquired's been on my list for a long time, and I listened to like literally I'm 30 minutes in on one of their 3-hour podcasts, and I'm like, I'm just getting pelted with information.
Just the best.
And I absolutely love it. So, what about you?
The Bear Season 2, a brilliant young chef from the fine dining world returns to Chicago to run his family's sandwich shop, The Beef, after his brother's suicide. This season, they turn The Beef into The Bear, a fine dining establishment. Mile-a-minute pacing with Jeremy Allen White, Eben Moss-Bachrach, Amy Elliott, Oliver Platt, and Maddie Matheson, by the way, who actually is a real chef in real life, but plays a handyman on the show. The one character who has nothing to do with food. It's genius.
How do you get casted in that?
Absolutely genius. He's perfect in the role, too.
Do you want to read for the chef part? No. I'll take the handyman.
See it on Hulu. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll check that out.
That's the episode.
Thank you for joining us for All This Nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Stu Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or our favorite, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Podcastindex.org. Special thanks to our floor director, Scott Little.
Oh, thanks, Skippy. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us.
We've been doing the end for 26 times. We think eventually we'd get it.
Nope.